Orbsat, ticker symbol OSAT. Pre-market, it's up 65% and on its way to becoming a double even before the market opens up. We will go into why is it happening, what's bringing it up. We'll also look into some interesting aspects about the company, which is much more interesting than the news that came out today, which is Orbsat expands its global e-commerce presence into 190 countries using Alibaba.com. Alibaba basically has its presence in 190 countries across the world. And yes, if you sign up with Alibaba, you get 190 countries access. But this is not, yes, it is exciting, but this company has something else going on already. If you look into their e-commerce presence, they're claiming to have access to Amazon, eBay, Magento, OneBuy.com, Walmart.com. Just start looking into this company. So on June 2020, they had a market cap of just under 1 million. And in September, it fell a little bit, about 500,000. And right now, they have a market cap of about 38 million. That's a 38x in just 1 year. That's crazy. Look at this bottom section. The percentage of shares held by investor or the insiders, the owners, it is about 32%. There are no institutions holding. And just look into the float. It's under 1 million, a very low float. And that's probably why the stock is jumping up way high, even on a small news. But just start looking into other aspects. Now, they're talking about in January, they launched this solar track, which is a solar-powered GPS satellite tracking solutions. Right now, in the field of IoT and tracking, remote monitoring, these things are growing up, especially with the advent of how IoT is growing up, even with AI data collection. These technologies are coming up rapidly. So this is the product. Just keep an eye on this product and we'll look into it later. Now, this is another one. Orbsat got awarded the satellite tracking order for GPM from GPS-1. GPS-1 is another company which awarded this contract to Orbsat for monitoring some horses in Kazakhstan. So they seem to have about 101.7 million horses in Kazakhstan, and they wanted a company like Orbsat to track these free-running horses in the fields. Now, this is the most interesting thing. Orbsat, they relocated their office into Washington, D.C. So they basically opened a separate government business unit so that they can get these GSA contracts from the government, because they believe that's where the government is spending a lot in terms of satellite and communication technologies, and they feel they want to be in that same zone to get that thing rolling. And in that process, they went and hired this gentleman, Louis Weiss, as the chief or CTO, the CTA, the chief technology advisor. Now, there is something interesting about this gentleman. He has 36 years of experience in the CIA as an officer within their Science and Technology Directorate. He's retired. His retirement with the CIA as a member of their Senior Intelligence Service took him to Blackbird Technologies as their senior scientist. So this guy brings in quite a bit of experience, especially his contacts with the federal government. I think this is much more interesting. Now, let's look into other things that's happening with this kind of company. So, this is a news that came out. This looks like July 6, 2021, rising on partnership of SpaceX Starlink. I did not see any much information to corroborate this topic. I don't know how true it is, how much of it is really true, because this article itself is not going into much depth. And here it's talking about, these are nothing but snapshots from their own presentations of Orbsat, and it doesn't go much into about the SpaceX. The only thing you can find is they're in a position to support big name companies like SpaceX, which leads to Starlink, and government facilitates that the United States Coast Guard. So it doesn't go into much detail of what's happening, so it's difficult to corroborate how much of it is true and how much of it is not. Their first quarter 2021 financial results, they're talking about how in March 2021, they saw a little bit of dip in their revenue. So from 1,468,000 back in 2020, they fell to 1,461,000. They're corroborating this to two causes. One thing is the GTC. They have two units. So the Orbsat works in the United States, whereas the GTC, which is the Global Telesat Communications, it works in the European markets. So they're operating in the 27 countries in the EU, whereas the Orbsat works in the 46 states here in the United States. So they're talking about how the GTC has seen an increase of 6.3%, whereas the Orbsat, which is here in the United States, they saw a decrease of 12.9%. And overall, you can see this decrease of a few thousands basically in the revenue. And that they're basically mentioning that it's due to the supply chain issues from the company's most popular product lines. Well, we saw things were going on here in the United States, especially with the COVID era. But yeah, just to keep in mind, just to share it out with there. Now, this is the annual report of 2020. And this caught my eye. So David Phipps, who's the chief executive officer, the president and chairman, back in 2019, the salary is 231,000, and in total he had 283,000. But in 2020, his salary was increased a little bit, but the amount of total he took was 754,000. So that's more than almost close to tripling the amount that he earned. And that was because of stock options of about 455,000 that this gentleman seems to have exercised. Or they gave him that option, and we are recognizing it as an expense in 2020. So that's something to keep an eye. This gentleman only had a 65,000, but relatively he started on towards the lower end towards the end of 2020, so he didn't have much going on for himself. But the others, these seems to be some older people already. You can see in 2019 he didn't have any expenses going on for himself. So yeah, it's something interesting to look into. Now, if you look into this presentation, they're talking about having all these products going on Amazon, eBay, and we saw all these e-commerce presence that they're doing. Now, I tried to look into what kind of products they have, because if you try to search for Orbsat and if you look into the products, there's nothing much going on. And then I saw these pictures and images that they have posted here on their presentation. This is the Orbsat company presentation, where they're talking about having all these different types of portfolio products in the field of IoT and satellite communication. So they mentioned about the solar drag that we saw earlier, and this is something to look into: satellite communications, then satellite internet, and then the SOS locator. So I tried looking them up, and then this came up, which is in the on Amazon. You can see this spot trace, and then you can see this spot Gen 4. Then you have the different types of spot generation products out there on Amazon, but it is not through Orbsat, it is through another company called Globalstar. So here, if you look into this is going through Globalstar. It's sold by someone under some other name, but Globalstar is the one going through. And if you come here, it talks about our partners and brands. So Tier 1 partner networks and products. It talks about this company, Globalstar, right here, and a couple of other companies out here. So it's basically these companies who are probably using their products or using certain features of the product, but it doesn't go into details of what is being used and how much of it is being used, when did they use. So those things are out there. So I'm not sure when they're talking about this Alibaba presence, is it under the name of Orbsat, or is it going to be their partner companies like the Globalstar and the other companies that we see, are they doing it? I'm not sure. It looks like a little bit vagueness in there. And you can see this other company called GTC Drag. This seems to be part of Orbsat, where they are basically helping in tracking all the vehicles or commercial vehicles out there. And this is the Globalstar website, where it's talking about how the different types of products that they have, the Spot Gen 4, Spot X, Spot Trace. I don't know how much of it, they're using part of Orbsat, and not sure. They do have presence on Walmart as well. And then I was curious to find this particular product. If you look into this section here, you have this fast field, or fast find is what they're talking about. And it maximizes a little bit. The SOS locator. So I tried to look them up, and this is what it's coming under. And it's under this company called McMurdo. And this is another company that we saw, ACR. and McMurdo. So if you go back to the presentation that's here, this is also not under the brand or not under the company of Orbsat, but another company called McMurdo. If you see here, McMurdo is another part of their brands, not under their brand, but basically as a partner for them. And ACR seems to be another company which they are working with. So this, I could not get full clarification on whether it's part of Orbsat or it's a different company, or how much of it is related, how much of it is being affected. And with regards to GSA, if you look and go back to this particular report, where they're talking about this, how Orbsat rises partnership with SpaceX, it's also talking about having government contracts, the existing customer base of 50,000 plus, including blue chips and governments or corporates. So it's already talking about having contracts with government going on. But if you look into this presentation here, it's talking about pursuing potential acquisition opportunities with the General Services Administration contract. So the GSA is nothing but how the government works with private companies for their general administration contracts. So serving multi-billion-dollar US government market. So they're pursuing, it's set in stone, nothing that is a contract. But it looks like they are moving in that direction, where they have one wing which is just focusing on the government business unit, and hiring of people like the Louis Weiss from CIA. That tells you that the company is being focused in that direction. So they have the the regular consumer market that they are trying to target through the e-commerce, Alibaba and the Amazons. But at the same time, they're also working towards the government and having that contracts in Washington, D.C. So it looks like a company that demands more research and respect in regards to understanding what they're actually doing. This price action is interesting, but it gives us attention into what this company is and trying to understand what they are about. Just found it interesting and just wanted to share with you. With that, take care, stay safe, bye-bye.